Hello again. Well, I'm going to be doing something a bit different this time round, and some would say rather morbid. I'm going to visit 3 locations here in Lincoln where 3 murders occurred in the years 1893, 1891 and 1949. I will tell you the tragic events leading up to the murders, and I will also be doing a bit of detective work of my own. I'm sure at some point most of us have had a minor disagreement with our neighbours. But a dispute between neighbours here on Danesgate in May 1893 ended in murder. The Barkers lived here at number 47 Danesgate. To his workmates, 59-year-old Christopher Barker, who was a joiner, seemed a normal chap. But all that changed in 1890 when his beloved wife died. After that, his mental health took a terrible turn for the worst. He became convinced that everyone was plotting against him, especially close friends. Eventually, his paranoid delusions focused on school teacher James Creasy, who lodged with Barker and his wife at number 47. After Mrs. Barker's death, her 19-year-old niece moved in as housekeeper for the 2 men. But she soon moved out when Barker made improper advances towards her. Enraged, Barker blamed his lodger for the girl moving out, and after a terrible row, Creasy also packed his bags and left. He didn't go far, however. He took up lodgings with Mrs. Wilkinson, who lived next door at number 45. Now, Barker developed a hateful fixation on his former friend and lodger. He wrote him insulting letters, swore at him in public, and once even assaulted him in the street. He even accused Creasy of having an affair with his landlady, Mrs. Wilkinson, who he called a strumpet of a woman. The abuse got so bad that in May 1893, Mrs. Wilkinson took out a summons against Barker for abusive language and threatening behaviour. When he received the summons, this only made matters worse. He prowled outside number 45 for much of the night, knocking and kicking at the front door. Barker returned the following morning and demanded to speak to Creasy. When Mrs. Wilkinson refused, he made a dash for the door, and when she tried to stop him, he pulled a revolver from his pocket and shot her in the head. He then dashed upstairs and surprised Creasy as he was shaving and shot him in the left eye. The police found Barker in the house threatening to shoot himself, but he was overpowered, disarmed and taken away to be charged with murder. Fortunately, Mrs. Wilkinson recovered from her injuries, but Creasy was pronounced dead at the scene. At the trial, the defence tried to plead insanity, but this was dismissed by 2 medical experts, and the jury found Barker guilty and he was sentenced to death. But just days before Barker was due to be hanged, his sentence was changed to life imprisonment. It is not known why the authorities commuted his sentence. Despite the medical opinions to the contrary, it is possible that they thought Barker was insane after all, due to the fact that the Barker family had a history of mental illness. This is Stanley Place off Chelmsford Street, the scene of the brutal murder of a young widow in July 1891. Her murderer, 22-year-old Arthur Spencer from Retford in Nottinghamshire, came to Lincoln to work as an apprentice butcher. He found lodgings here on Stanley Place with 32-year-old Mary Ann Garner, a widowed mother of 4 children. Arthur fell in love with her and asked her to marry him, but when she refused his proposal, he moved out to live in the butcher shop where he worked in Waterside South. But before leaving, he warned Mary that if she would not be his wife, then he would return with a gun and shoot her and then himself. Tragically, she didn't take him seriously. When Arthur heard that Mary had been seen in a pub with another man, he again delivered his ultimatum. But once more, she thought he was only being dramatic. On the 31st of March, Spencer went to Stanley Place on the pretext of collecting some belongings from his old room. He called Mary upstairs, and as she entered the room, he shot her twice in the chest, and when she turned to run, he shot her in the back. He then turned the gun on himself and fired 2 shots. The first bullet just grazed his chest, so he put the gun in his mouth and fired again. The second bullet passed straight through his head, exiting at the back of his neck, but amazingly, it didn't cause any serious damage. Mary was carried to a neighbour's house by her 16-year-old son, where she bled to death. Her last words were, "Oh God, do try and save me for the sake of my poor children." Spencer pleaded guilty at Lincoln Assizes before Justice Vaughan Williams, and he was executed by hangman James Berry on the 28th of July 1891 in Lincoln Prison. On the afternoon of July 10th, 1948, 26-year-old Joyce Harrison left her home here in Croft Street and was never seen alive again. Joyce, who had been apparently happily married since 1941 to her husband William, had recently discovered she was pregnant. The couple were delighted, but there was just one problem. Joyce had every reason to suspect that the child's father was not her husband's. In November 1947, Joyce had been working at Lincoln's Midland Railway Station, where she met railway clerk Frederick Fullard, aged 25, and the couple soon embarked on an affair. For years, Joyce and her husband had been trying to start a family without success, but now she was expecting a baby which her husband believed was his. The pressure of the affair became unbearable to Joyce, so she decided to end it. However, Fullard begged for one last meeting, so on July 10th, at approximately 3 p.m, Joyce cycled from her home here on Croft Street to meet Fullard at the foot of Cannock Hill. From here, they made their way to Hayton Lane, and I will be following the route they took on that fateful day. Does it look familiar? Well, those of you who watch my videos will know that this was formerly the site of the old city gallows. This unassuming country road seems to have a lot of dark history associated with it. At around 7:30 that evening, Sergeant Wheatley was making his nightly patrol of the area when he was approached by a man on a bicycle who shouted, "My son has just strangled a woman, please get an ambulance." After the murder, Fullard returned to his home in nearby Branston and told his father he had strangled Joyce in a cornfield known locally as Black Cottage Close. When Sergeant Wheatley arrived at the scene, he found Fullard kneeling over the body of Joyce. He later reported, "There were extensive bruise marks on the throat and neck. Round the neck of the deceased was a headscarf. This was wrapped around twice and the ends twisted over and pulled tight." Here is a photo taken of the crime scene in 1948. This is Hayton Lane, where Sergeant Wheatley was stopped and alerted to the murder. It is still identifiable today. As you can see, the cottage on the left next to the distinctive pylon is still there, although mostly obscured from view now by a tall hedge. Here is another crime scene photo taken in 1948. This is where the murder took place, the barley field known locally as Black Cottage Close. Now, I've been doing a bit of detective work and I think I have found the scene of the crime. We need to cross the road and head for that plantation. Now, I've been doing a bit of exploring off camera, and this location best fits the crime scene photo. Now, bear in mind that a lot can change in 72 years. The wooden gate has gone, and the hedgerow on the opposite side of the road is noticeably bigger, possibly because of the Hedgerow Protection Act of 1997. The tree is gone, but there is still a noticeable mound where it might have been. And you can see one of the wooden electricity pylons on the verge near the gate. They've also gone. And next to the track we have the barley field. Possibly the same one where Joyce was murdered. When questioned by the police, Joyce's husband William revealed that he had no knowledge of his wife's affair. The first he knew of it was when the police informed him that his wife had been murdered by a former lover. Fullard was composed when charged with Joyce's murder. He told the police that he knew the baby she carried was his, and when she refused to leave her husband for him, he strangled her. After killing Joyce, Fullard intended to kill himself. On the day of the crime, he addressed an envelope to his parents, in which he writes, "Do forgive me for ending both our lives. I thought it best for both of us. I do hope it doesn't hurt anyone connected to either of us. God forgive us. I know it is a selfish and ghastly thing to do, to take her life. But if I can't have her in life, I will have her in death." Fullard was sentenced to death at the Lincoln Assizes on November 9th, 1948. His barrister appealed the conviction on the grounds of insanity, but the judge argued that because Fullard had written letters, he knew what he was doing both before and at the time of the offence. The application was denied. However, despite losing the appeal, the death sentence was commuted, and Fullard was released on licence on the 2nd of May 1957. So there you have it. Friends turned enemies, love unrequited. 3 murders that prove the old adage that love and hate are truly 2 sides of the same coin. Anyway, thanks for joining me again on this rather dark journey into the past. Take care, and I hope you'll join me again next time.